Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mommyingwhilemuslim podcast. This is Uzma.
This is Zaiba Hudson. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, to an extra, I guess we're having an extra Facebook Live this week, which is a double bonus for you all and for us because I get to see Uzma's face. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, it's awesome. How was traveling this weekend with the coronavirus?
You know how I am. Pretty much, my daughter's coming to say good morning. She's just waking up. Good morning. She's waking
Hey,
up.
Zara,
You know how teenagers do. It's 11:30 on a Friday. I don't do anything differently than I do normally. I scrub my Lysol wipes. I clean the trays. I make my kids wash their hands. I put the Zicam in their nose. I am very much one of those anal mom travelers, and I don't let them eat or drink anything. So it's just one of those things where I don't think the coronavirus did anything differently for me, other than I was more conscientious of people coughing and doing those types of things around me. But made it home safely in my parents' dining room right now. Had the benefit of going to coffee with my mama this morning, so it is all good. But what about you, Uzma? How was the rally yesterday, the Get Out the Vote rally?
It was good. I guess we'll just kind of take it in the things that I learned. If you're going to go to a rally, on our Instagram and Facebook stories, I think it's on our Facebook story, I'm not sure, but I kind of dressed up sort of, but not really. I guess I'm always in costume according to these photographers who want to take hijabi pictures, at rallies. But, I had my face painted. And, I'm sitting like
You
way
look like
up, not in the nosebleeds,
It
but
was
pretty high.
so exciting.
I know, that was the look I was going for.
You were like Braveheart. I loved it.
Glasses. Yeah. I was William Wallace, but I had
Tara
the glasses
with the love
on
glass.
to show I'm here to kick ass, but with love, of course. So when you're sitting in a seat and you're making a political statement with your face or your dress, plan on somebody picking you and saying, hey, come down to the pit. Now, that sounds exciting, but it meant that you were going to be directly behind the stage and you're standing. There's no chairs. So for 2.5 hours,
oh my gosh,
almost 3 hours, I was on my feet, like to the point where my toes were cramping while I was on stage. And I was like, I can't sit down. I can't fall down. I can't do anything because this may be on camera. So know that. The second thing I learned is invest in small backpacks, those little canvas, I don't even think they're canvas. They're like plasticky knapsacks that sometimes we take to Hajj with us. Get those because those are the ones that are going to pass security. Take cash, like singles, so that you can buy water over there because they won't have water and they won't let your water in. It's very easy to get free signs, so don't stress out about bringing your own signs. A lot of times they won't let you bring homemade ones. They want printed pretty ones, I guess, for the cameras, and they are very abundant over there. And last, pack extra deodorant. For those of us who wear natural deodorant, that stuff's going to run out, and you've got your arms up in the air holding signs. So you want to make sure you smell good, because I did not, and I was regretting it. That's what I learned at the rally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so lesson learned. Make sure you have pretty signs at these rallies. You wear extra deodorant. I feel like that's what we're doing right now, right? And then what is the other thing? Like, be prepared to put your stuff in a small backpack because you may be there for a long time. But yeah, at the moral of the story, what is it that we're trying to tell everybody to do this year, no matter what your candidate is to get out the vote, because it's through our civic engagement and our participation that our voices, no matter what they are, will be heard. So that's, I think, our soapbox for today, and we always have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But this is our point of view, our broadening our point of view series, and we brought Maryam Munir on Monday, and we're very excited because we're pleased to announce that Dr. Saba Maroof, a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist from the Detroit metro area, is joining the MWM team. She is a second generation who's been a third culture kid, had her own kids while in medical school and training, like you, Uzma, and lives the same crazy life that we all do. She provides medical health education in her local community, and she, believe it or not, is also a creator and host of another podcast called Unsung Heroes about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So we are so blessed to call Saba part of our team, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Saba.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for inviting me
Salam.
and having me on. You guys can hear me, right? We're all
Totally.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
but do you happen to have your face? If you have your Facebook Live on, Saba, do you mind turning it off, because we can watch the video later, just so that we don't have the feedback on our end? If you happen to have that on.
Oh no, I don't. I don't have Facebook Live on.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I think she has a relaxing
Yeah. So
fish
thank
tank.
you guys
Perfect.
so much. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for
And considering I
inviting me
didn't
and
sleep
having me
last
on.
night, I'm really, really excited.
Oh yeah. No, but I'm really excited to be with you. I'm really excited about everything that you guys are doing. I love this platform, the work you're doing, and the conversations that you're having. And it's so important to get our voices out there, and while sharing and learning from each other, but also having fun. And I mean, I think that, and that's kind of, we'll talk a little bit about it later, but I'm like taking a break from my own podcast, but that was really just my main, like all of us, my main purpose was really just to get our voices out there. It's really important to use our voices.
Yes, and that's why, our soapbox today was voting. But Saba, tell us a little bit about your mom's story and what momming like Muslim looks like for you.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and I'm also a mom, and I'm a mom of 4 as well. So joining the mom of 4 club here.
Yes.
Sense of pattern. So I actually have 2 boys and 2 girls. I have a 13 and 11-year-old boys, and then 7 and 5-year-old girls. And that, I had this dream. As I was considering my career, I basically grew up seeing my mom work as a psychiatrist, and she actually was in her training when I was a little bit older. So it was just really neat to I was just fascinated by the books that were like peppered around our family room coffee table and bookshelves, books on like obsessive compulsive disorder and chapters on attachment. And I just found it really all very fascinating how the brain works, why people behave the way they do. So I thought about like I knew that I was interested in psychology, something related to psychology or psychiatry, and it's been really interesting. Going back to your question about mom, what does momming look like? People ask me when they find out that I'm a child psychiatrist, they're like, "Oh wow, you must have all the answers, and does that help you with your parenting?" And I actually feel like it's not really, but the other way around. I actually feel like being a mom definitely helps my perspective and helps me in my practice as interacting with families and kids of all ages, and being a child psychiatrist, because I feel like I can really kind of understand where they're coming from. I understand the day-to-day, which is interesting, because even in training, I was kind of one of the ones, younger ones to start having kids, and because I had my 4th year of medical school, then my second year of residency, and then my 3rd during fellowship, and 4th after I was done as an attending, or
oh my gosh,
in the workforce.
You and Uzma have a lot in common where that's concerned. Yeah.
Twins, braided up.
Yeah. So I mean, like, for example, if we're talking about sleep and bedtime, I feel like I can relate to the families, because I'm like, I know it's easy for me to tell you what to do and talk about sleep hygiene, but I know how crazy it can get. And I think the only way that is when you're a parent. You can't force kids to do anything. You can't force them to eat. You can't force them to fall asleep. So I feel like I kind of have more of a realistic, I think, approach and outlook when I'm interacting with families and talking to them about different aspects of their daily lives and their mental health and well-being.
So my question to you is, Saba, why did you take... Exactly. And you took the MD route and not the PhD route. And can you explain the difference to our audience and why you made that choice to go that way? Like for the MD route, you can actually prescribe medication versus just providing talk therapy, correct?
Yes. So yeah, that's a question that I get a lot. Um, Even as I'm talking to people, I can tell in their minds they're like, wait, she's a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, right? So I mean, I know it's confusing, but basically, yes, I went to medical school, and like I said before, as I was considering my as a college student trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I did think about getting a PhD in psychology. And for me, I mean, I'm sure part of it was kind of familiarity. Like, as I mentioned, my mom's a child psychiatrist. I kind of understood a little bit more what that training entailed. But I think at the end of the day, I kind of felt at the time, at least, that I wanted to be able to prescribe medication as kind of an extra tool and extra, extra training, not extra training, but extra tool that I could use to help people. Um, and in our training, we definitely are trained in different types of therapy as well, particularly like CBT and psychodynamic. In my fellowship, we did some interpersonal therapy, and what that means is even in your training you actually have like these long-term patients, like people that you see, and you're seeing them like every week, and you're encouraged to kind of incorporate those things when you're seeing patients. But of course the big focus of course is diagnosis, evaluations, and then being able to prescribe and manage medications for patients. So for me, I thought it would kind of I'd be a little bit more well-rounded. But I guess the day-to-day, of course, is a little bit different. The way that healthcare has kind of changed over the past few decades. Previously, psychiatrists were very heavy with therapy. And you can still definitely find some today. And that really means that you're seeing patients week to week on a weekly basis. But I think the way that managed care is, the way the healthcare system is now, is that it's kind of a little bit more categorized and divided, where what insurance companies even are kind of more paying for sure, is that you see a psychiatrist and you see a therapist separately, which is interesting, and that kind of has its own dynamics at play. But I'm trained.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We are really sorry for the delay. It looks like Facebook just didn't want us talking right now, so we're back on. And it's one of those things where they're like, we got to shut you down. Maybe we're talking too much. But I wanted to reintroduce Saba Maroof, and I really appreciate her insight. She was literally in the middle of telling us how she was trained in both therapy and medication, and kind of letting us know why the healthcare system is moving in that direction and what kinds of therapy she actually studied. So Saba, thank you so much again. Apologize for whatever technical difficulties we were having. And if you don't mind, first of all, excuse my crazy baby screaming in the background, because that's what happens when you're kind of recording on the go. And Saba, could you just let us know, finish your story about what kinds of therapy that you were studying and the role of that in the way that you parent as a mom right now?
Thank you. So I was just saying basically that, most psychiatrists really, we work very closely with therapists, so that, we collaborate continuously about mutual client. They call them clients, we call them patients. Tomato, tomato. But we basically, work very closely together in kind of providing care. So yes, therapists will, meet with patients like once a week, usually in the beginning, and then maybe as slowly over time, maybe every other week. And then I see people maybe like in the beginning, every month or so, every like maybe 2 week, 3 weeks, and then in a month, 2 months, things like that, something like that. But we all work together in helping people that are dealing with stressful situations, adjustment issues, of course, depression, anxiety, ADHD, trauma, and PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, autism, really anything, kind of all of anything that to do with mental well-being, mental health. And part of my job then is to evaluate and diagnose, and really to help people, help educate them on what's going on, what their treatment options are. Again, collaborating with not just therapists, but especially because I see kids, I will reach out and talk to or get feedback at least from teachers, school social workers, counselors, primary care physicians, sometimes other specialists. And so my job is kind of helping really hone in on what's going on, the diagnosis, and if it's something that medication can help with. Um, and if that's the way to go, then how to treat based on that diagnosis. And it's not black and white. We don't have like a blood test to say what's going on. And Uzma knows this. I mean, you're a primary care, you're a family physician.
Yeah.
You see a lot of psych patients too. You deal with a lot of psychiatry, a lot of mental health too. So I think we're kind of all working together. My brother's actually a family physician, and he'll like text me once in a while for like a quick question about medication. But I guess the thing is that I always just like to tell people that yes, we deal with medication, but it's so much more than that, and that's why in our training, we spend a lot of time with, again, like development and these therapeutic principles, because as you know, Uzma, you can't, medication does not solve everything. You can't just like throw medication on something. And people, there's a lot of stigma against it too. So, we found that, for example, for the treatment for when we're talking about depression, study after study has shown that the best treatment is a combined medication and therapy is better than medication alone and therapy alone in some cases. So, yeah. And then in terms of
That
having
is
kids,
awesome to bring
oh
up.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Um, I think that's really important to bring up. And I was at a conference recently, and I think one of the key points that I heard that kind of stuck with me that I could use for people who are very resistant to medication because they're like, oh, I don't want to get addicted. And it's like, guys,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's kind of like cocaine because some of the same receptors are, being worked on in your brain with these drugs. But what this person said was fear the disease, not the medication. It's like these same
Mm-hmm.
people who are so worried about coronavirus right now would not take the
Yeah.
drugs for it. They probably wouldn't take the vaccines for it either if there was one. So,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like, but you're so fearful of the disease. Like, and especially with mental health, I think that's really important, and I would argue that that's 90% of my job as a family physician.
Mm-hmm.
So, you
Mm-hmm.
spoke to a lot of mental health issues, but can you speak to the ones that you see recurring in the Muslim population that you work with? And I hope that the Muslim population is seeking you out specifically because um, of your faith.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting topic. Really, just the intersection of psychology, psychiatry, mental health, spirituality, and religion. And what we know is that we are definitely, as Muslims, we are not immune to mental illness, to substance abuse, trauma, um, domestic abuse, marital discord, divorce, all of these things. As we know, I don't think, unless you're living, with your head in the sand, we're not immune to these things. And even though, we have our families, we have our communities, we definitely, of course, we have our faith, but, we definitely have our share of struggles, and we're not immune to that. And so actually, I feel really fortunate living in this area, in the Metro Detroit area. We have so many Muslim mental health providers. And actually, part of what I do, I would say, kind of on a daily basis, is we have like a network where just a group where we have all of our psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, marriage counselors all in one group. And anytime there's, someone hears of somebody that needs a referral or something, they'll be like, hey, is anybody in this area that takes this insurance and can help with this age group, this kid just yesterday, a 10-year-old who the mom is worried that he's kind of shut down and running out of class. And so we kind of work together to kind of almost like come up with a really specific referral. And so, of course, the majority of the people that I see are not Muslim, but I definitely over the years have, seen a lot of Muslim patients. And really, that's kind of just reflective of kind of what is going on in our society. Some of the things that I see, of course, a lot of it depends on level of acculturation. If is there like kind of this gap between the parents and the child, if the parents not understanding, for the teenager, why friends are so important. They're very overprotective, maybe I don't say overprotective, but protective of their child, worried that they're kind of losing their child to their culture and their faith. And sometimes the kid just kind of needs some space. I've actually had a lot of teenagers that wanted to come in for therapy, and even and actually were even open if they were really, this is if they were exhibiting a lot of symptoms of depression, they were actually more open to sticking with therapy and medication more sometimes than the parents. That's something that's happened.
Yeah,
I
because
work at also, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, especially because there is, like you mentioned earlier, a huge stigma, specifically within our community. I think in the overall community about our kids reaching out and trying to get help. But I think in our culture specifically, there's this stigma, and why are you kind of like airing your dirty laundry, or you know what
Exactly.
I'm saying? And so I feel like our
Mm-hmm.
kids are more open. I feel like our generation is definitely open and receptive, and our kids are kind of thinking like everybody should go to therapy, like we can all benefit from
Yeah.
this, and why not, you know, if it can help provide them tools and opportunity to bridge, you know, some of those communication barriers between their parents and their child, why wouldn't you allow them to seek
Exactly.
therapy if needed, especially during these, like, as you know, from a medical perspective, these hormonal flux, which sometimes they themselves don't understand physically what they're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think one amazing thing about being again in this community too in Michigan is that we have a lot of imams that are really at the forefront of talking about these issues, including these issues even in their weekly khutbahs, Friday prayers, their sermons, and kind of talking about these issues at their lectures, Friday night lectures for the family. They're just really kind of trying to tie it in so that it's not such a, like, almost like a schism between, medicine, mental health, and being Muslim. I know that another thing that we've done in this area is we would like kind of meet with the imam kind of on a, like, just a few times a year, so that, because they're inundated, so maybe people are not coming to a therapist or a psychiatrist, but they're seeing somebody about their problems. And a lot of times the imams, and studies show this too, the imams are actually kind of like the gatekeeper, or like the gateway to talking about these issues. And I know the imam that I talk to a lot here, who's amazing, he is just overwhelmed with requests and helping people. And he's actually had some, I mean, he spent they spend hours and hours talking about these issues, and they frequently refer to our local Muslim mental health professionals here. And I think one thing that I remember him and another therapist friend of mine were saying was that there's a really, going along with that stigma, there's a big sense of shame. Exactly like what you were saying. We don't want
Mm-hmm.
people to know that, we're going through these issues, and we want everyone to know about this. And like, it's almost like that this need to have like this perception that everything is perfect, and there's no family that's perfect. There's nobody that's perfect. Um, and sometimes that comes with socioeconomic class, I feel like, with status. It's like we just don't want to acknowledge that or just talk about it. It's very, I mean, there's still a lot of shame, I think, that goes along with it. But I'd like to think it's getting better. Like you said, the younger generation, they're definitely more open to getting the help that they need.
Well, I think, Saba, it's
So my question.
also our generation of first generation Americans, second generation Americans who are trying to shake off a lot of this cultural stigma that is not just, it's a double stigma, right? Like there's the American mental illness
Yeah.
culture, and then there's our back home culture, and that's like a double whammy. But I feel like the first ones that are shaking off those chains and saying, no, it's time. So give it, I mean, you can
It's
address
so
that
true.
if you wish. Okay, perfect. I was thinking you'd be in agreement. But, since we're talking about points of view and different points of view this month, and specifically broadening our point of view and our expertise on this panel by bringing you on the Mommyingwhilemuslim team, can you talk about your specific point of view and how it's going to affect Mommyingwhilemuslim? And while you're at it, tell us about how that point of view you used for your own podcast.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, just kind of like I said
That's a lot.
before, I
Sorry.
think just, oh, no, no, that's okay. As a mother, like, just another mom's perspective, and it's something kind of I was reflecting over the last few weeks too. I also feel like I'm kind of moving, I'm transitioning to a mother of kind of a little bit older kids now too. I'm kind of moving away from the baby stage, definitely away from the baby stage. Again, my oldest is 13, my youngest is 5, and so I kind of feel like we've turned a corner, and we've kind of moved now beyond the issues of like nursing and potty training, although those are very it takes all of your energy. And now it's just other things. and so it's actually really interesting for me because I feel like when I'm looking at these issues like, when to get a cell phone, when to get your teenager a cell phone, social media, video games, for my boys, the amount of time that they're playing on video games, the type of video games they're playing. And then for my daughter, who's she's in second grade, um, friend issues. It's really interesting having boys and now my daughter, and we didn't really deal with a lot of friend issues with my with my son, and it's like every day my daughter's coming home with kind of like this other thing that's going on in school, so dealing with those kind of things. And then and again, I mean, with all their ages, instilling a love of God, of their faith, being proud of their faith, and having making sure that we're instilling a strong sense of identity while also educating them, making sure that they know the basics and beyond of their religion, inculcating good habits, a love of reading, from writing, making sure how do I get my boys to write more, and read more. So everything, while also, and it's been interesting. I also have to balance the reading those things for work, like how to better the lives of my patients, like as parents and the teenagers that I see, the kids that I see. So it's kind of neat because whatever I have to read for work, it's like in many ways it can be applicable to my own children. I also do a few times a year I give some talks to different audiences. So I give a few talks to residents and fellows in psychiatry and child psychiatry, and they're kind of surrounding usually topics about like that kind of have to deal with minorities. So like bullying in minorities. I do one on social media, internet, like devices basically. And intercultural kind of stuff. So I think, I think it's just really adding to both of you, your point of view. And I guess just from that perspective too, kind of like looking at it from a mental health perspective and kind of what, what are kind of the issues, what are the ways that we're looking at it from that point of view. And then in terms of my podcast, so actually, it started right after Trump. So it was like kind of the winter of 2017, and it was right after the Muslim ban. And actually, it was really kind of just really just a series of little serendipitous events. But I did have the show for almost 2 years, and I've been taking kind of a long break because it was a lot to do it kind of by myself. And it takes up a lot of time, and I just felt like I wasn't doing justice. I wasn't really as good with the marketing piece. Because it does take a lot of time. So I really applaud you guys, like very
It does.
organized, and I just love that you guys have each other and a team. But I really loved it. It was really a creative outlet. So as I mentioned, it kind of started right after the Muslim ban. I was actually invited to be on another podcast, a local one. We actually have a studio here called Podcast Detroit, and Calvin Moore was the host of. He has like kind of like a roundtable discussion show. So you go to the studio, and it was just really neat. But actually, first of all, I was going to try to find somebody else. A friend of mine from high school reached out to me, who I haven't talked to in ages, and that's the power of social media. And she saw that he was looking for some Muslims in the area, so she thought of me. And that's kind of, this is my imposter syndrome. I was like, oh, why me? Like, that's the other thing, being in Michigan and all of our communities, we have amazing people in our communities that are doing amazing things. And I was like, why? I don't have like a PhD in Islamic studies or in politics. I don't know what I would say. But then I was like, you know what? I don't think I need a PhD in any of those things. I'm a Muslim and I can just talk about my experience. And it
Exactly.
was
Why
really
not
neat
you?
just to have
That's
our,
Uzma and my philosophy.
yeah, exactly. So, and I just turned 40 this year. So I think that was kind of part of the, just as I was approaching 40, it was like, you know what, let's just do it, like just get rid of those negative thoughts and just, they're looking for a voice. So just do it. And so then I basically thought it would be really cool to have a show here at this network with just sharing Muslim voices. And it kind of just evolved from there. And basically, the show was about what's called Unsung Heroes, Stories to Inspire. And that's kind of what I did. I interviewed different people, different projects, different groups of people sharing their stories of inspiration and action. And it was a creative outlet. And I felt like I was producing something like art. But also just sharing different voices, mostly from the Detroit area. But I had people that would call in, different authors. I love reading. So anytime I could get like an author to come on and do an interview, I would. And Calvin would be he was my co-host. So that was actually kind of cool too, to have kind of this dynamic of a Muslim, daughter of immigrants, and then he's African American, and he like has a really cool perspective too. And it was neat because then he would like kind of ask questions about Islam as we were talking about things. So I think it was fun to listen to. But I think it just kind of reflects how for all of us, I learned a lot about myself through that process, but it just kind of reiterated that it's really important to continuously be evolving, learning new things, and creating. And so that kind of really helped me do kind of all of those things. Yeah.
I love all of that, especially that, it's kind of what happened to us is we became this place of information for non-Muslims, and we didn't expect that to happen, but you already had that on your podcast, which is so cool, having somebody who's not Muslim asking the questions. And we get that on the back end where people are DMing us and PMing us extra questions or subscribing to the podcast in order to just be, like Zaiba says it, be a fly on the wall to learn more about us. But we're still,
Exactly.
we're so glad that you're here because with your perspective as a psychiatrist and able to do therapy, you can identify coping strategies that we didn't necessarily learn, and we would certainly want our children to learn to deal with all the additional stressors that they have that can induce mental illness in them. So we just really appreciate that, and we hope that more people from the Muslim community will understand that that's what we're trying to do here, and that's the momentum we're trying to generate, and we'll start listening, if nothing else, to hear your expertise and your special topics. Zaiba, do you want to talk a little bit about what we plan for Saba to do for our audience on Mommyingwhilemuslim?
Well, personally, I'm excited because maybe I'll get some extra therapy out of it. There's nothing wrong with that. So if we can
No,
get that
selfish
done, that's
intentions
a
are
bonus for
okay.
me. No, of course. And honestly, I am like, because I do have the older kids, and I'm still at that stage where I'm learning the medical, the hormonal, the physical changes that they're going through and how it affects the way their personalities are coming about. Like just being able to learn and talk to you about that, and that these things are normal, and their American Muslim experience is going to be even different than ours. Like you were saying, my son goes out on Friday nights. He goes to parties. He does those things. He's very strong at being American Muslim, but I'm also kind of like, you have to participate in your community around you in the way that you do, and how to navigate some of those things from our perspective. So I definitely am really excited that you're on, and what our listeners can hope to hear from you is just that, right? Is navigating some of these uncharted territories, especially with the older children, because that is something we're getting a lot of the PMs and DMs about, like, my kid is essentially crazy. No, he's not. This is just normal, and this is how we'll navigate. And things like social media, the effects of social media and body image, and how our Muslim girls and boys are not necessarily immune from that, and just giving a little bit of perspective from a medical mental health professional background will definitely round out some of our entire team. And I can't tell you how excited I am about working with you all going forward.
Oh, great. I'm so excited too. Again, thank you guys so much for just giving me this opportunity and inviting me to be part of your team. I'm really excited.
That's awesome. So we're going to actually link up in our show notes the link to your podcast, Unsung Hero. So if anybody wants to hear those topics, they can. And we've even got your Instagram contact on the show notes. I'm sorry. Yeah, on the show notes. So people can send you questions. But what we foresee is Facebook Lives with just Dr. Saba Maroof, so that people can send in their questions, and maybe you can teach them something about coping skills, do some of those talks that you do out in the community in the virtual space, so that our mom audience can benefit, inshallah. So we look forward to all that and more, and we will continue to broaden our points of view this month. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Mommyingwhilemuslim, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.